Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully, and welcome back for another installment of Skully Rambles over old-fashioned 90s logos. Or, in other words, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. The commentary. And yes, I am gonna ramble over logos because that's my favorite Activision logo, and fucking hell, it's even saying something when, you know, even the Disney logo, well, Disney Interactive specifically, all the way back then, also had this really cool and mysterious looking logo, which is just, It makes you excited for the game that you're about to play. It's full of mystery and magic. As if the programmers were magic themselves, and speaking of programmers, yeah, this is another game by Traveller's Tales, who, for any other Disney buffs, also developed Toy Story 2, the video game. In fact, it actually runs on a very similar engine to that from what I've read up, but anyway, this also includes clips from the show, slash, well, the intro. It's entirely possible that I might actually have to either edit these out or cut these in a bit of a bizarre way, because I'm not quite too sure on the copyright status here, because while Disney and Pixar themselves have gone out of their way to actually kind of deny the show's existence, why exactly that is, I have no real idea. I think it might have something to do with John Lasseter again. For those of you who've seen the Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep part where I talk about his little beef with Chris Sanders, but yeah, in terms of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, what this game basically is, it's pretty much, well, it's like a 3D third-person shooter adaptation of the television series, as you can see here. And technically speaking, I haven't actually seen the series, but this is a game that, well, to kind of put it in brass tacks really, was one of the first video games that I'd ever played in my life. It's a bit difficult for me to tell really, because in terms of my early gaming history, I did play this before Jedi Outcast, but yeah, Jedi Outcast was technically the first game that I ever really finished, but Buzz Lightyear of Star Command was one of my earliest gaming memories, so what you're seeing right here is Chapter 1 of my life, the beginning of the Solidus-Skully story arc where my fascination with video games began. You know, as we just sort of go over the control screen. I had the PC version, mind you, I didn't have a PS1 as a kid, but yeah, pretty much the same sort of game, it's just using a controller rather than a keyboard. But anyway, we've got explanations and controls and whatever else, so I'll shut up.
Lightyear, a farmer from Joad just called in a 911. You stop by and check it out. Okay, Buzz, let's run through some of the basics. You start with a standard issue laser. Any add-ons are going to cost you some Galactic Alliance credits, or GACs for short. Now, Buzz, your mission in each level is to arrest the bad guy. You can't beat the criminals early. You can only make an arrest at their getaway spot. Buzz, along the way, save as many of the LGMs as you can. Now, Buzz, your mission in each level is to arrest the bad guy. Simple enough, right? Wrong! You can't arrest the bad guys until you reach their getaway spot. Track them to the getaway spot and stop them. If the bad guys get to their getaway spot before you, you only have 15 seconds to catch up with them. Otherwise, you lose, Ranger. If you get to the getaway spot before the criminals, Mirror will be there to reward your efforts.
Well, thank you, Commander Military Guy, who I believe is voiced by Adam Carolla, who I think nowadays is more known as like a radio personality and anything else. Well, whatever. Celebrity voice actors that only Disney lords and masters can afford. Oh, yes, hello.
Stop! In the name of Star Command!
Sorry, no can do, Lightyear.
Oh dear. So, to kind of talk about gameplay before I eventually get back into my nostalgic tangents is, yeah, the gameplay is pretty much, think a third-person shooter akin to the Agent 9 sections of Spyro Year of the Dragon, mixed in with some of the racing gameplay of Sonic R with a slight introduction of Mega Man-esque weapon mechanics. Basically how the levels are set up again, you pretty much heard all this from Commander Nebula, but fuck it, I might as well explain it a little bit more concisely since this is what we're doing here. It's pretty much set up in a similar vein to, again, you have a bad guy, he's running away towards the end of the getaway point. You can try and shoot him, as I did earlier, but he pretty much has a no, you can't hit me shield, so get to the end of the level, make sure that you get there before he does, otherwise, if he makes it there before you have 15 seconds to, you know, get to the end of the level, otherwise, he gets away, game over. However, if you make it to the end of the level before those 15 seconds elapse, then, you know, you pretty much fight the boss fight, put him under arrest, and thus Buzz Lightyear is still the poster boy of Star Command. However, get there before, the bad guy, as our simplistic space police terminology will lead us to believe, then, well, you get a bit of extra help, but you'll be seeing that a little bit later on. In the meantime, however, I'll get into some of the other gameplay facets a little bit later. Yeah, you pretty much just have a bunch of different ways of getting across the level. Again, you have a jetpack, you have a hoverboard, a little teleport gate, all at the expense of galactic credits. Or CADs for short. Or whatever the fuck you were saying. But yeah, in a similar vein that I guess sort of parallels to a precursor of Ratchet & Clank, yeah, if you want to pick up new weapons or, you know, access some of the hidden goodies, like, you know, a lot of the bounce pads or springs or whatever, yeah, that costs a lot of galactic cash. So, yeah, you're pretty much going to make sure that you're collecting galactic credits all throughout the level, otherwise, well, you're pretty much, well, okay, you're not technically buggered, but it does mean that you're going to be running a bit short when you're trying to, you know, pick up new weapons and take out threats and what have you. Again, not necessarily impossible, but at the same time, though, you do need to be actively picking up credits along your way, otherwise, well, you're not going to be able to afford the weapons, and that will become evident just as soon as we tango with the boss, who, believe it or not, actually becomes a regular enemy after this level is done, so, yeah. Sorry, Lightyear, doesn't really have much character.
Surrender now, or pay later.
You won't stop me, Ranger.
And the reason why you want to be picking up weapons is because you see the color of his shield right there. Again, if you're using your standard-ass blaster pistol laser, yeah, that's not exactly going to be doing much against him. You need to be switching to and fro between your weapons. In this case, utilizing a weapon such as... Actually, I have no idea what this weapon is called, but again, if you see the little purple sphere that's sort of pulsating under it, yeah, that's usually corresponding to the sort of shield power-up that they have. Again, destroy that layer of the shield, and then you pretty much get access to the second tier of that shield, which is, again, color-coded with a green sphere. That means you switch back to your basic blaster pistol, or a weapon similar to it, like we have with the... what's basically the submachine gun weapon of the game. And again, you can pretty much use that to whittle down their shields pretty quickly. You can technically do that with, you know, the wrong color weapon as well, but it does take forever, and the only reason why I know that was because I pretty much spent a lot of my time as a kid playing through this game and kind of experimenting with different ways to take out the enemy, and if you're wondering why I bothered, I was a kid and I had infinite free time back then, and... yeah, this commentary is pretty much just gonna be nostalgic. And, yeah, this also runs on a bit of a medal system, so you need to collect a set amount of, galactic credits in order to, you know, make back another medal, or collect all the LGMs in a level, and you also get an additional medal. And if you're wondering why you need to do this, well, it's because all these levels are in fact gated by, well, Star Command medals. Why Star Command is gating our progress? I have no idea. I guess they just feel very stingy, or Buzz has something to prove as the golden boy of Star Command. But anyway, we're not quite done yet, because we also have additional missions in the form of time trial and collecting XR's body parts. But I'll let the first one play for you.
Buzz Lightyear to Star Command. No time to lose. Let's get busy. Lightyear out.
So yeah, the time trial is pretty much simply as it simply does. Get to the end of the level as fast as you can, bada bing, you do the thing, try not to slow down, and pretty much pick up any options that'll let you go there faster, like that hoverboard that I just skipped over. Now, you are required to do this in order to get medals, but at the same time though, I'm only going to be showing off all the additional missions once, and that's primarily for Joad, so I can pretty much explain what the hell's going on. For every other additional level, I'm pretty much going to be flipping to and fro, so like, I mean, sometimes you'll see one mission in the original level where I'm collecting XR's body parts, another one where I'm just doing the time trial. I mean, you are going to be seeing all these levels through and through, you know, as, you know, the main story missions, which is pretty much catch the bad guy who's from the television series, and what have you, but yeah, in terms of the additional stuff, I'm pretty much just showing off one additional mission per piece, just to give you a feel for the level, and in turn also make for the medal threshold. And to kind of put that in perspective, it's nowhere near Sonic Unleashed levels of you're not going to have enough, so you're going to spend your time just constantly putzing around trying to make sure that you get enough medals doing tedious shit. But likewise though, I mean, it's really something that only really comes into play in the late game, but even in that case, all you have to do is just go back to a level, do one or two additional things that are fairly easy, considering that, I mean, this is a kid's game, so you should make the mark no problem. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, what a lovely first level, and, to kind of talk about anything else while we still have the level going on, in terms of how Buzz controls, I'd call it like a rather refined version of how Sonic R plays. And again, you do kind of notice it because, again, Buzz's turning radius doesn't turn on a dime like your typical Crash Bandicoot, but rather in a radius. Kind of similar to how the Sonic characters turned in, you know, Sonic R, and similar to Sonic R, because I do suspect this is running on a similar engine, he also has a tendency to get caught up in the geometry, so that's a bit balls. But anyways, this is the Collect XR mission.
The key to being blown apart is keeping an eye on where your body parts land. A little help here would be a good thing.
XR, Buzz Lightyear is on the job.
Thanks, Buzz.
So yeah, given the linear nature of this level, pretty much collect all the additional XR parts throughout the level, and bada boom, you get your little robot buddy back. So, yeah, I suppose I might as well get into the characters. I do know sort of who the main cast are, because, again, while I didn't watch the television series as it was airing back in the early 2000s, you know, that I probably would have had I had, like a Disney cable TV show, but, you know, I didn't have those sorts of channels when I was a kid because my family was fucking broke. So, again, I pretty much just had to make do with what was basically analog public access television. Well, that and also Channel 7, but then again, that was just because, you know, we live in Western Australia, so yeah, that's kind of neither here nor there in this case. But I did, on the other hand, see the pilot movie which spun the Buzz Lightyear TV series off, and, yeah, XR is pretty much, you know, the snarky little robot buddy. Again, you also have, you probably saw it a little bit earlier, but again, you also have Booster, who's pretty much the lovable doofus who's fat and bumbling, but well-meaning. And then, of course, you have Miranova, the action girl who's, has, like, those sort of Shadow Cat powers where she can phase through things. And then, of course, there's Buzz Lightyear, who, compared to his Toy Story counterpart, is, you know, the hero, the good Space Ranger man who does heroic things and fights against evil. And again, all of which I pretty much knew from the pilot movie from the TV series. Everybody else, though, kind of on and off. Like, I mean, again, I know that the commanding officer is called Commander Nebula. I know Warp Dark Matter was, like, Buzz's partner who then turned evil and worked for Zurg, and everything else is pretty much just a blur for me. But anyway, here's XR, so let's save him.
Need a hand, Ranger?
Buzz! Oh, man, I knew you'd come back. Well, I might have had a few minutes. Moments, really. Very brief. It's not me doubting, it was the body without the head. That was the doubter. The head always knew.
And that little clip will be my one experiment to see whether or not this goes through. I hope it does, because otherwise I'm gonna be in for more editing work. Which sucks, because I'm feeling a bit lazy tonight. But anyway, here's our second level. Flamar.
Buzz, you remember Gravatina. Well, she's on the loose again, and I need you to corral her. Okay, Buzz.
Yeah, sometimes Commander Nebula's whole thing's like, he'll pretty much give you a description of, like, what you need to do, and then he'll pretty much go back into basic sort of, use the PS1 controller to play the game, and here's how you do basic actions, whatever, so, yeah, nothing to really worry about. Holy fuck, what a big cranium. That ain't a planet, baby, that's hydrocephalus. Flamar, number 1. Which sounds like a beta name for the level.
Buzz, does it have to come to this?
There's only room in my life for one lady, Star Command.
No one refuses me!
Ah, Lava Planet. And we also have an additional vehicle, the Space Ranger bike, which I guess Buzz used to get here, but whatever. Not really worth thinking about in this case. But yeah, as for a lot of the villains of this game, I barely know who any of them are, so why is Gravatina evil? Don't know. Again, I haven't seen the TV series, mind you, and to my knowledge, I don't think it's ever actually gotten re-released, like not even on digital streaming services, where you thought that it would have been easy, but that does lead me into a bit of trivia that I have sort of offhandedly mentioned beforehand, which was, yeah, to do with the production of the show, because apparently John Lasseter, who, for those not in the know, is pretty much one of the big heads, or at least was one of the big heads over at Pixar, yeah, he reportedly hated Buzz Lightyear of Star Command with a flaming fucking passion, and, yeah, basically, Disney sort of went out of their way to completely disown this series for reasons that kind of bewilder me, because I don't think it was unpopular, but I don't know, I guess with with recent years they probably wanted to sort of sweep it under the rug for the new darker and edgier Lightyear reboot movie, which I heard apparently wasn't very good, but I don't know, that's neither here nor there in this case. But I mean, putting that aside, yeah, I don't know who any of these people are, and Yes, once again, John Lasseter rearing his ugly head. I mean, first it was Lilo and Stitch, and now Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. Does he just hate 2D animated projects? Because that's the kind of vibe that I'm getting here. Or maybe 3D animation was looked down upon back in the day, or there was some sort of, like, prejudice rivalry going on? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, well, but I mean, the point is that, yeah, I don't know if it's possible to even view this series anymore unless,
I got this one, Buzz. Softened her up for you, Buzz.
Well done.
Always willing to lend a helping hand.
So yeah, that's what happens if you get to the getaway spot before your rival character does. Yeah, Mira will pretty much come in with a giant fuck-off laser beam, soften them up a little bit, and yeah, they pretty much only have half health, which, again, it is a pretty decent incentive to haul ass and make sure that you can get to the end of the stage before your rival character does, although, again, something I always wished for as a kid. I kind of always wish we got the gun that Mira had, because, I don't know, it seemed really powerful and cool, and the fact that she doesn't stick around to finish, Gravatina off is kind of pointless, really. I mean, come on, you seem like you could do the job just fine. Why is Buzz Lightyear even here? Is Mira in cahoots with the villains? Well, who knows, really. I mean, I certainly don't. I mean, unless, of course, it was like one of those generic kids' TV show, oh no, hero characters turn evil because of mind control or some shit, which, I mean, I'm gonna hazard a guess and say it was probably bound to be there, because, I mean, a lot of shows with the Wayans of this ilk are usually cut from the same cloth with a lot of generic sort of plot lines that are just sort of dime a dozen, really. But then again, I wouldn't know, I've never seen this fucking show, which, I don't know, if I can find it anywhere, I might make up for lost time for my lost childhood. A blue, 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 a blue, 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 a blue, 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 blue. Ooh, Jesus Christ. I mean, I know the characters explode whenever they die, but, ooh, Gravatina, she would not be looking that, healthy if she basically took a dive into Anakin Skywalker territory. Also, God, it's so weird seeing Buzz Lightyear out of his fucking spacesuit. God, that's bizarre. And he's still wearing that, like, weird purple, like, fucking... What would you even call it? Like, that purple undersuit thing? Are they meant to be his skivvies? Well, I mean, he's got shorts on, so it's not going over his pants or anything, so... You know what, I'm not gonna think about that. That would be sullying the childhood, and oh no, I ran out of galactic credits and I didn't collect the LGMs. Oh, I'm a disgrace to Star Command. But on any other case, this is pretty much where we're just gonna sort of split off and do our own thing for a while. By which I mean, you know, switching between time trials and collecting Exile's body parts. Which, I don't know for certain, but again, if I can fathom yet another guess, I mean, at least given some of the clips of the, you know, what we actually see in the game, I'm guessing there's probably a running joke where he's a robot, but he blows up every now and again. I mean, I suppose anyway. You know, if I can find the series anywhere, I'm gonna see how right I am by maybe comparing it with a couple of episodes here and there, so who knows, really. If it's at all possible. But anyway, a lot of these levels pretty much work out the exact same way. Again, you have a linear structure, you're pretty much bouncing and jumping your way across to a very linear level design, and I'm starting to wonder, actually, if maybe this was what ended up landing Traveler's Tales to get the whole Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex deal, because, again, looking at some of the level design, again, you have very basic sort of platforming things, you have pretty basic attacks, power-ups to help in the field of battle every now and again, you know, collectible items and stuff like that, and, you know, very simple sort of instant replay value, just add water with, you know, collect X amount of things, or, you know, time trials and whatever, so... Yeah, I mean, it does kind of make me wonder, actually, if, again, had Wrath of Cortex been a PS1 title, perhaps Wrath of Cortex might have been a slightly more flowing and functional game compared to what people were expecting. Who knows, really? I don't know, like, I mean, putting Crash Bandicoot tangents aside, really, it's, I mean, I will say this about Traveler's Tales, like, I mean, they're not terrible developers by any stretch, it's just that, well, I mean, maybe just with this project in particular, it does feel very work for hire, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because Traveler's Tales are at least relatively decent at what they do, but as a result of that, there is also, well, I mean, the factor of, some projects feeling a little bit more undercut than in fact they should be, and that's only something I realise as I get older, but, you know. All that aside, we're on to our third mission, Canis Lunis.
Alright, Lightyear. You should be able to handle this one in hypersleep. That energy vampire knows for A2 is up to his old tricks. Let's put the last nail in his coffin. Zerg?
Sheesh, yak, yak, yak. Put a sock in it, Commander asshole. But yes, this is a vampire man named Nosferatu, because it is a pun on Nosferatu as a vampire thing. Well, I mean, gotta get your vampires in somewhere, with the werewolf-themed level, and also Canis Lunas 1. Can you tell what we're going back to?
Stop right there, Creepazoid.
Feed me energy, human.
I can see that we'll have to do this the hard way.
So, this throws up a bit of a change in pace, and yeah, thinking back to my childhood, this was also the level that I got stuck on the most back when I was a wee lad, so yes. Anyway, to kind of talk about how the game sort of escalates in terms of challenge, yeah, again, you're still pretty much doing the same sort of basic get to the end of the level before your opponent does, but there are also specific caveats, and in this level, it introduces the whole concept of bombs that appear on your pathway, like right over there. Again, if your enemies pretty much cross over the threshold where the bombs are, the bombs activate, and you pretty much have to destroy it before tracking your enemy down towards, you know, the end of the level, really. Again, you pretty much can't fight them until you disable all the bombs, so make sure you do that before time runs out, otherwise they explode. But you are rewarded for your efforts. I mean, again, you do get gold galactic credits, which are pretty much the best sort of currency, silver being the second best, and red meant to being, like, the just costing by 1. Again, it pretty much goes in increments of 1, 5, and 10, really, so yeah, that's pretty much your galactic credit threshold. But as for anything else, though, yeah, this is also around about the point where, you know, the levels begin to ramp up a little bit. I mean, Nosferatu was a bit of a spike in difficulty, especially compared to levels 4 and 5, which have much slower opponents, but yeah, it's a bit of a wake-up call, at least for a kid, but again, you have pretty much infinite fuel for your little Star Command hoverboard thing, so again, provided that you keep on the move, destroy the bombs, and I suppose go out of your way to collect the LGMs where you can to collect some extra medals, you should be relatively okay, but if not, well then, well, you failed Star Command, son, and you gotta retire. Yeah, but in terms of how I would also describe some of the hazards of the game, it's very sort of, actually, the design ethos is actually very Mega Man-esque. Like, I mean, you have a bunch of enemies that are gonna pip you, and to put it mildly, you're gonna be taking damage regardless, you know, much like into your classic Mega Man game, so it's not necessarily a factor of carefully plotting out your moves, it's more so just sort of knowing how to appropriately evade enemies and sort of tank the hits where you can, but make sure that you save all your best toys, and by which I mean weapons, so that you can defeat, well, the main enemy, so to speak. Again, in this case, Nosferatu is our Robot Master. So again, if you save a lot of your ammunition for Nosferatu, then you should be pretty good, and if not, well then, you're stupid. Although, I mean, it is still worth destroying enemies so you can get some extra galactic credits so you can make up the credit threshold in terms of getting the medals, but I don't know, it's up to your discretion, really. I mean, that is also why Booster is also pretty useful as well, but I'll get to that after the cutscene.
I got this one, Buzz. I softened him up for you, Buzz.
Thanks, Mira.
Always willing to lend a helping hand.
There, we've heard both variations of the line, and now we never have to hear it again. But yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, yeah, Booster is also pretty useful for that, because again, he pretty much does take out all enemies in a certain area, and in doing so, he can also destroy enemies and allow you to obtain all the bloody galactic credits that drop from them, so yeah, you can pretty much make up the deficit that goes into the hundreds that way, but you know, that's just level design shit. Anyway, Nosferatu, compared to a lot of other bosses, actually works a little bit differently. From what I can gather, he's an energy vampire, which does actually play into his boss fight, so yeah, destroy all the turrets from which he's gaining his electric energy, and by the time you destroy all of them, yeah, he's got no power to trade from, so yeah, he actually ends up dying, which you can sort of tell which enemy he's sort of jacking into for power by the little halo on top of it, so yeah, destroy all the turrets, and he'll fold like a house of cards. Not really too much to say, apart from the fact that, yeah, one of the more interesting boss fights, which is certainly one thing that I'll give Nosferatu compared to a lot of the other bosses in the game, because look, I pretty much leave him alone for a while, or hang on, no, do I take out his shield? Because I'm pretty sure he does actually just drop dead after a time if he has nothing else. Yeah, just wait for a little bit, see? He has no energy to get from, and now he dies. So maybe you do just have to take out the first shield, I'm not too sure. Oh well, regardless of such, and as you can probably tell with all of these cutscenes, yeah, they're taken from the television show itself, but they have no relation to the level going on, so all of these stories are pretty much self-contained. You're pretty much just chasing down these enemies completely divorced of any context, and all of these lines are also divorced of any context. Like, I mean, I guess the implication is that all of these villains are working for Zerg, but never does it really play into any sort of overarching story, really, which either tells me that Traveler's Tales was on a very specific time crunch, or they just didn't really have the budget for a more fleshed out story and just thought, fuck it, whatever, let's do a thing and throw in some clips from the TV show. Except not in a place where it makes sense, just throw them in because, I don't know, videotapes are expensive? Whatever. On that note, I'm Solidus-Skully, keep it new metal, and next time on Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, we'll have more Star Commandy antics. To infinity and fuck you.